Welcome to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Janna. This is our weekly venture into the world of small to medium-sized businesses and the entrepreneurial spirit that drives success.
So our goal here is to help you grow and to be the best you can be, both in business and personally. To do that, we identify and we discuss topics that will hopefully help you as you work to build a successful business.
We also interview business owners and executives. It's our hope that you may be able to gain insight on ways to help you be a better leader and provide a better culture for your people.
Our mission here is to help you pull the chute once a week to work on your business instead of always working in your business.
So we hope you find these discussions insightful, helpful, and useful.
And thanks for your support. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Well, welcome everyone to the Pull the Chute podcast with Jeff and Janna. We are so excited to be here today. It is a very, very special day. It is our 100th podcast episode. So Janna, we've done it, 100, crazy.
Woo! Happy birthday to us.
Yeah, right? I can't believe 100. I mean, I was telling other people that they're like, most people quit after 10. You guys got to 100.
I know, that's pretty good. Well, you know what I think it is also, Jeff? We've had some really good guests. I mean, some really interesting people from, people in Europe that talk about connecting their bodies with their coaching business and all that, to people, our one guy that we just asked him one question and he pretty much spoke for the entire 25 minutes. And then we've had some really interesting people. So there's a lot of great people out there that are coaching. You need to consider it because there's some good stuff going on.
Yeah, there really is. It's been a lot of fun to do this. And thank you, Janna, for doing this with me.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
We got together in October 22.
22, kind of the end of the pandemic.
Yeah, so it's been about a year and a half that you and I have been together. I did it for a while, but it got kind of boring by myself. And what a difference it was to bring you on. So I have a question for you. So for our listeners, we're going to just kind of ask each other some questions today. And so my first question has to do with that. So why did you decide to be my co-host when I asked you? What fascinated you about doing this?
Well, first off, I love spontaneity. I love that kind of, back and forth repartee with people, because simply you get real answers. You get honest answers. It's not rehearsed. It's kind of like when I talk to showbiz people about my showbiz past. Why did you leave TV? Why do you like live theater, live concerts? Because it's the real deal.
Yeah, that's true.
You're getting a very organic, honest, authentic answer or response back and forth. And I also just think you and I have great energy. And, once we met and we kind of met at the networking thing and spoke, I thought this is going to be an interesting balance, because you've got, first off, male, female, you've got two extroverts, but you've also got two people that have come from different aspects of business. You with technology, me more in the media, print, hospitality sphere and kind of all that. And I think it's worked out great. Yeah, so that's why I did it, because you rock, Jeff.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I remember the first time we actually met one-on-one. We met at a networking thing, and then we kind of hit it off, and we said, "Hey, let's go meet somewhere." And we went to Nashville, and we must have talked for an hour and a half, and it was nonstop.
It was
energy
nonstop.
Was just incredible. And so, for me, that's why I got excited about just having you on board, because I'm like, I need that energy sometimes, because when it's just you, sometimes there's days when you're not quite as full of energy, right? And that's what works.
So true.
So, if I'm having a down day, you're picking up, and there's days when you're not totally into it and I'm picking it up, but that's what co-hosts do for each other. So
yeah. And I also think it's good because sometimes you will ask questions with our guests that I didn't think of asking. And same with me, like we're going to kind of delve into a little bit different areas of expertise with a lot of our coaches, and so I feel like the listener is getting a more balanced, well-rounded kind of a podcast, just because there's two hosts instead of one, and we're pulling things out of our guests oftentimes that are a little bit different,
Well, it's funny, our last guest, which the episode hasn't even come out yet, it was kind of great. After we finished our podcast, he said, well, I got to tell you, I've been on a lot of podcasts, and I've been on a lot when they have co-hosts. You two get along really well. You compliment really well. He goes, you made it so easy. And so, I hear that several times, and it's just like, boy, that's the fun of it, right? Because
that is the fun of it.
Yeah, we don't combat each other. We kind of support each other and lift each other up. So
yeah, I definitely think that. Okay, so I have a first question for you, Jeff.
All right, go for it.
Tell me, I know you're moving into leadership, but that's one of your big platforms, which I love, because you and I've talked about that. That's an important thing. Tell me how it's changed, like even just in the last 5 years. How has leadership changed? How are you talking off that, that subject for people?
The biggest thing I think the changes come is because we realized that the communication side, which is your deal, but that's a big deal, right? So we have 4 generations. We've talked about this a couple times. We have 4 generations, baby boomers and Gen Xers and millennials and Gen Zers in the workforce.
Mhm.
And that's really changed. I mean, the stat that we just found recently is that 75% of the workforce is going to be all millennials by 2025. So that's next
Yeah,
year.
that's crazy. Yeah.
69% of them aren't ready to be leaders. So it scares the crap out of me to think
Yeah.
that, but that's because they weren't taught how to be leaders. They were given jobs, but they weren't really taught leadership. When you and I came into the system, we weren't really taught leadership. We had to develop it and understand it, because it was that whole top-down mentality. Do as I say, not as I do. And, just, come to work, get your paycheck, and that's all I want from you. I don't need any feedback. And I think COVID really changed all that. When people had to stay home, there's an interesting stat that says before COVID, 23% of all employees felt comfortable. Only 23% of all their employees, I should say, felt that their leaders, that they trusted their leaders. Okay. During COVID, it jumped to 55%. But as we sit here today, it's down to 22%. It's even lower than it was before COVID. And
Yeah.
that speaks volumes to me, but it just shows that we're not being good leaders. We're not being respectful leaders. We're making it always about ourselves instead of about them. I love the famous line from this book called The Purpose Driven Life. The first line is, it's not about you. And
Right.
if we can understand that, that's a big change. We need to make sure that they understand as a leader that it's not about you, it's about your people. And when you make it about your people, they're going to go the extra mile for you. They're going to stay late without being asked. They're going to come in early without being asked. And that's the difference, in my opinion, in the last 5 years that has changed dramatically, is that the workforce has said enough is enough. We had the Great Resignation recently. 4 million people a month were moving jobs because they felt unappreciated. 79% of them, I should say, felt unappreciated. Only 12% left for more money.
That is a significant amount, Jeff, of unhappy people out there. I totally agree with you on that. I think it's very true. And leadership is where it starts. And it's not about top down anymore. It's about equal. You are my equal. I might be in that leadership role, but I respect you equally.
And that's the big word. I respect you. I know you're in the leadership role. You're giving me a voice. You're letting me be heard. But ultimately, and I tell my guys this too, I go, look, I want to hear everything that, if I offer an idea, I want to hear your feedback. But ultimately, I'm the boss. I get to make the decision. And trust me, I'm going to take all your feedback into consideration. And so it might not be exactly how you wanted it, but it might not be exactly how I wanted it. But we're going to come to a togetherness kind of thing. And then when I make the decision, you need to make sure you support that decision. And they're all right, because that's the respect side of things.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think that's what's changed so much. And I get fired up about it because it's like, we have got to make a change. I mean, there's the next generation coming up. If we don't start teaching them how to be leaders today, there may not be good leaders tomorrow. And if we don't start, stepping up, that's why we're, here at Pull the Chute, we're really focusing on leadership. We're changing how we go about things. We're creating leadership. We're creating peer groups of leadership where they can be trained together as peers across different, verticals and different businesses, but they'll learn to support each other. And then that's the important part. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, again, communication is the key, is the big sort of through line through that, is to be very transparent.
I agree. All right. My second question for you.
Okay.
What was your favorite episode?
I think 2. I think probably Luis, the one that we just had, because this is what I loved about our last episode, and you'll hear it coming up in the next couple of weeks, is he was very heartfelt about coming from nothing, about literally saying, I'm the first person in my family that not only graduated from college, but graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And and he was very humble in the way, in his approach in dealing with companies and leaders and such. And I really believe that when you take that sort of servant heart, or that servant sort of platform, I think that really shows, like we just talked about, that you're willing to listen, you're willing to put leaders or strong people in the right roles. And we talk about this all the time, with the right butts in the right seats. So I think that was one of my favorites, as far as how humble he was, admittedly, where he came from, to where he has worked, because he's worked with Google and he's worked
Yeah.
with Tesla, and he's talking about all these big companies that he has actually been not only coached with, but been on their executive teams, or I don't know how,
Yeah.
whether part-time or whatever. But so he's obviously done well. But I think Luis was one. And then of course you and I talk about our girl from, oh God, Jeff, she was from the Netherlands that talked about,
Yeah.
yeah, talked
Ariana
about,
Lalakea.
yes, that you have to connect your body and your cycles with your management skills. And I just thought, that is a very, again, that's a very kind of Western European way to look
Yeah.
at this. Of course, in America, we're not going to talk about our bodies and all that, but she even referenced it to men having cycles and having times when they're going to be more on point and more together with their thoughts, because they're depending on where they're at in their cycle. I just thought that was really interesting, because Americans are kind of hung up on that whole body thing, we don't really talk about that.
I know,
but that she has actually made kind of a coaching career out of it, and that being one of the things that she brought up, because you and I are both kind of going, okay.
Yeah. Well, she actually put us through a 6-minute whole
That's
set
right.
on the show. That was great. It was a lot of fun.
That's right. So that was, I think those two kind of have stood out, and then there've been others, but yeah, those two particularly. Okay. So my second question to you is, when you are in a coaching situation and the communication is not flowing freely, how do you kind of get everybody back on the same page, or get kind of everybody back thinking in a way that is more team oriented rather than singularly? I mean, do you have little tips for our listeners that you kind of go back to?
Okay. Wow. You went deeper than I did on some of my questions. Holy cow. I was having fun with them, but okay.
My third one is a fun one. So.
But that's the fun of doing this, right? I would say a lot of times what you need to do is decide who the leaders are in the room and get them to come together. And if you can get the leaders to come together, then the rest of them will come together, right? It's there's that whole piece about when you're getting ready to make change, you got to buy the early adopters and get them to adopt first. And then there's the big gap of the not sure, they're sitting on the fence people. And then there's the I'll never change group, right? And the percentages, I think, are 13. If you get the early adopters, if you get them to buy in, they can convince the ones that are sitting on the fence much easier.
I think that's great. That's great feedback, Jeff, because think about it, like when you're in a leadership role or a coaching role, and you and I have even coached before together, and it's very true. Like, it's almost like you kind of want to single out those people in a way, so that then they're leading the meeting, or at least, you're kind of edging them to take charge, because then there's a trust factor, because they are coworkers rather than the coach, or the person in the room that's new or different. So yeah, that's good.
I like that you hit the word trust, because I think that's a big deal there, right? So if they're all on different playing fields here, and we're trying to bring them together, they have to want to have that trust within those people. And that's why if you find the right people that are kind of the leaders, and maybe they're peers, but they're, peers don't, it's not necessarily that a leader is someone that's above you. You can have peers that are leaders within you, and people will follow you. If you're the same level, they'll follow you because you're the better leader, in a sense of you care about them. And so you sit down with them and you say, okay, tell me what you didn't like about this. Where are we? What are your struggles? And help them understand why we're moving the way we're moving. And I think that makes a big difference, but that's only can happen if there's trust between those people. And so that's why I think is an important factor in that whole process as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's good.
I think it's, this whole leadership thing is something that, we've really got to start. And I think I'd like to, start talking about this more in the show, is this whole leadership piece, because I think it's just a much more needed topic sometimes.
I do too. And here's what I also feel like, Jeff. I feel if business could accept that more, that teamwork, makes the dream work, or all of the cliches out there. But what we have found is in the last 25 years, it's totally proven to be successful. That when you put the right team leader in the right position, whether it's a creative position or a technological position, or, something where they have to have verbal skills, or something where they have to have that kind of servant mindset, then the group within the business is going to thrive better. They're just going to. I agree. It's communication, it's trust, and then it's profitability or performance, Yeah.
But here's the deal. I mean, people can't, I just was reading a thing on LinkedIn today. It's about the frustration of business owners when they hire someone to come in and They do sales. They want them to just help them with their sales, right? Well, they don't teach them what they're doing, or they do spend time, but then they forget about everybody else. And really, to me, it's like when you want to put someone in a leadership role, you got to coach them, you got to teach them, you got to teach them what it's about. You can't just put them in a position to have them figured out, because again, what we did 20 years ago or even 6 years ago is different than what we're doing today. And so
Absolutely.
I encourage our listeners more to find some kind of leadership training, either, classes or ongoing coaching. And you and I are both firm believers too. It's like, you can't just put them through a 2-day class or a 1-day seminar. Leadership is muscle memory. It's how you react to situations. And so if we don't spend time, and it takes time, that's why like all our coaching stuff is a minimum of 6 months. Cause it's like,
6 months, absolutely.
I can get you to probably where you need to go. And then if you hang with me for another 6 months, I'll take you to the next level. But it's all about that muscle memory and how you respond. And
yes,
the problem is that we get into the moment and we forget. We respond how our personality is versus how our leadership personality should be. And
yeah,
so
I think that's great. Yeah.
that muscle memory, I think it's going to make a huge difference.
Well, and oftentimes within the first couple of months, you're just learning the skill sets, and but then what happens is you've got some kind of a big conflict,
Right.
and that's where it really shows.
Yeah.
That's where leadership really comes into play, is how to resolve big ticket issues, or things that are disrupting the business flow or disrupting your revenue or whatever that is, personality issues and that kind of thing. So I think that 6 months is minimum, because that's when you're going to be tested with most all aspects of the business, as opposed to 1 month or, a couple of months. I definitely think that.
Absolutely. So my next question is right in your wheelhouse. And I always love for you to talk about this, but it's a topic that we have to continually talk about because it's ever changing. And that is the fact that we have 4 generations in the workforce. And how do we communicate across 4 generations? What are your thoughts? I mean, do you change the way you behave to communicate with each generation, or do you stay true to yourself?
I think that's a great one. Here's my 3 C's, and you've seen my little spiel, but in my book and what I talk about when I do coach multi-generational businesses is this: clear, concise, and commanding. And those are my 3 C's. And here's why. When you take away the generational language that we all have grown up with, it's part of our our sociology and our socioeconomic development once we get into the workforce, and you stay about as clear as you can with the messaging, with the task, with the emotion, then it cuts through all 4 generations, because you're taking out that generational language. You're not taking out emotion, but you know what I mean. You're keeping things very clear and concise. And then the commanding part for me is just making sure that you have enough interest in your delivery. And that can be learned, but it's also being authentic and true to who you are, Jeff. So yes, to answer your question, you do have to stay true to who you are personality wise, because people can sniff out BS in 5 seconds, no matter what generation you are. If you're trying to fake it, or you're being unrealistic, or being, overly emotional, or however you want to say that, then you're going to get into trouble there. You want to be true to yourself first, yes, but you also need to kind of command the space, or command the room, or command the requirement of you. So I think it's those 3 C's: clear, concise, which means be clear. Don't give them 20 pages of stuff that they've got to remember or they've got to go through. Just keep it very, very simple. Because here's the cool thing: if somebody has questions, or if somebody doesn't understand, then if you are open about it, then they'll ask questions within their generational experience. I mean, so then you can address, like a Gen Z, or saying, well, I learned this on Google, because that's the way they learn everything, is by looking it up, right? If there's a video on it, they're going to learn it that way. And sometimes it's more experiential, like the older generations are used to. So I think, if you keep everything pretty clear, not that you're going to take emotion out of it, but take the heat out of it, is what I'd like to say, And then my last thing is ask questions. Let them have a platform to share in their generational language or whatever, so that then everybody understands where that person is coming from within their generation. I think that's the best way. It kind of levels the playing field,
And the reason I wanted to ask that, because I was on a podcast earlier, and he said to me, somebody asked me, he said, so when you communicate with multi-generations, do you go to their level? Like, do you communicate with, texting of, LOL, he said, right? And I said, no, I said, you be true to yourself, and I respect them for their communication style, and they should respect me for my communication style. But I'm not going
Yeah,
to, as you just said, I'm not going to be someone I'm not, right?
no,
People
because they're
will
going to
figure
see
that out in a
through it.
heartbeat. Yeah.
Well, and here's the funny thing. Nothing is funnier. And this is actually brings up, this is something that's kind of sweet. My 22-year-old son is going through kind of a challenging time right now with his job. And so he was trying to communicate with the business owner. He's a chef, and with the restaurant owner and stuff. And just some of the words he was using, it was precious. And I love to hear him, to bounce things off of
Right.
me, but he's using words a little bit incorrectly every once in a while. I'm thinking, okay, you can't do that. Like, just talk in your comfortable language. By the same token, nothing is worth, Jeff, than baby boomers trying to be hip,
Yeah, I
like
know.
talking to millennials and Gen Zers and some kind of, shortened jive language. And you're just
I
like,
know.
oh, don't do that. Just talk. Just be you. They'll get it. They'll get whatever you're trying to say, but do not try to do that. That cross generational, like hip slick language
Right.
thing. It's pretty
Well,
uncomfortable.
and I think if we could just be ourselves, that we're teaching the other generations to be themselves.
Yes.
So the goal is not to be something you're not, right? The goal is to respect each other, understand each other in who we are.
Absolutely.
I
That's
think
part
that's
of the strength. Yeah. In building teams. The other thing is there is so much inclusivity now. Like, you have to be inclusive with all types. What is the pronoun? And you and I have talked about that a little bit. I mean, that can get a little carried away, and I'm not going to get on that today, but yes, you have to be inclusive and respectful. You just have to be inclusive and respectful, because there are so many multinational people here now. There's a variety of nationalities in the U.S. workforce now too. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important. Okay, last question for you. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think you have great answers. We've tapped on this a little bit in the podcast in the past, but what do you do to have fun? What do you encourage your teams to do to have fun? Like, if they're in a situation where you can tell in your coaching experience that this company or this team that you're working with needs a little fun, what do you suggest?
several things. The fun one that I love doing is I have a book that's got 400 questions in it. And so you pick a number. So if everything's falling apart, you just go, all right, we're going to get to know each other a little better, because sometimes we think we know people, but maybe we don't, right? And so
Good.
you get to pick a question from 1 to 400, and I read the question and they have to answer it. And so it's a random thing, right? And so it might be, what do you do, or how do you relate to an animal? Or what's your most embarrassing moment? And it's questions like that, right? And so then they're like, but they have to answer them. So we do that. And then the other thing we do, which I think is a lot of fun too, is that, literally we'll take a ball and you just start tossing it to different people who you want. And there's questions that go along with the ball, right? So they're on the ball is a piece of paper folded over. There's a bunch of them on there. So what happens is you catch the ball, you peel off one piece of paper, you have to answer the question. So very,
Oh, that's cool.
but it's instead of them just picking a number, it's someone picking you, and they
Yeah.
want what you have to say. So, but I love doing games like that, just because they're icebreakers, but B,
Mm-hmm.
kind of loosens up the room, because now
Yes.
the answers are all coming from everyone, and you get to know them a little better, you get to understand them a little better. And again, as much as you think you know people, sometimes you don't. I mean, I did a men's retreat one time where we did questions like that. And so what we did was we asked everyone to write 3 things about themselves that no one else knew.
That's
Okay,
great.
another thing, right? So then here's the funny part. So men's retreat, my dad is on the men's retreat. He put 3 things down that nobody knew about him. I didn't even know.
Oh,
I
see, that's
had no
so
clue that
great.
was my dad. I was like, holy cow, that's you, right?
Oh, that is so great.
Yeah. So I would read the 3 things and then everyone would guess.
Yeah,
Whether they were right or not. So it was really a lot of fun to do something like that. But
I love that. Yeah, that's great. And you're right. It levels the room and gets people talking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Gets people sharing. One of the ones that I like to do for icebreakers when I'm in a situation where I'm new and people don't know me is you ask them what their Thanksgiving tradition is, like what their favorite food is for Thanksgiving. Yeah. Oh my God, some of the answers that you get are hilarious. Like, well, my mom makes this, or we do this on Thanksgiving morning and stuff. So I always like to do the holiday one, just because that runs rich and deep with people, just because holiday traditions when you're growing up are such an important part of of your adulthood and such. So I think that's a good one too. That's great. I love that.
Lightens the room, right? That's what we want to do. We want to lighten the room.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. So people aren't as angry and everything. So our 100th episode is so great. Where do we want to take this for the next year? What do you think? What's your thoughts?
I think we continue to work on the leadership aspect. We continue to talk about communication. But here's what I challenge our listeners out there, because we've got a, pretty nice group of listeners or people that are new to us.
Yep.
Send questions in for us. Jeff and I are both extroverts. We love to be put on the spot or just ask a spontaneous question like that where we can kind of talk about it. We've both been in a lot of different situations in coaching and in businesses, in our personal careers. So I say, yeah, I would love to see people do a Q&A, Jeff, like where people write in or email in and we answer a question at the end.
I love that. You know what we should do? Let's do a campaign and get people to give us questions that they know are going to be on particular podcasts. And so that we'll give their name, we'll give the question, and we'll give the answers. I think we should start a campaign, a social media campaign to get that going. I think that'd be great. And especially, and we could do the boy girl, yeah.
Like this is the boy answer, this is the girl answer, even though most of the time you and I, feel the same way.
We do.
It's not really a gender thing. It is kind of funny when you get, when you get that kind of energy, where you get the male female kind of perspective. So that's a good one.
Janna, this has been so fun. Thank you for just hanging with me and being a co-host. I really enjoy your energy all the time. We have so much fun. It's funny. We don't talk to each other like outside. Like maybe we'll go a week or two without a podcast. Then we kind of catch up. We're like, hey, how you been? We haven't talked to each other in so long.
I know it. I know. Busy lives. It's crazy out there.
It's fun to be able to do that. So for all our listeners, thank you so much for supporting us. 100 episodes is an amazing accomplishment, we feel. Thank you for that. And, continue to listen. And as Janna said, send in more questions. We really would love to do a Q&A time. That'll be a fun one to do with one of the podcasts. But, in the meantime, look out for Janna at jannalandry.com, looking for pullthechute.net. Check us out. We got all kinds of good things going on. Janna has a book. I have a book. I have a second book coming out. So just so many good things are going on. But, ultimately, we just feel so blessed that we're together and that you're there listening. So thank you for all that you do. Until the next time, stay safe and be healthy.